Hello everyone, and welcome to week 2 of our online English 112 course. Just a few quick notes. I wanted to mention that you are all doing a very good job with the Blackboard discussion. They're very productive responses, so keep up the good work. I want to remind you all, because a couple of emails have been sent my way regarding the quizzes. All the quizzes will take the format of short essay, and there will be only one question. So if I'm giving you 30 minutes to complete a quiz, chances are that the response will require thoughtfulness and thoroughness. So don't think that just because you're dashing off a quick answer that you know to be right, that you're going to receive all the points if you aren't fully explaining your meaning. Again, the quizzes are an opportunity to demonstrate that you have done the reading and that you understand it and that you can apply it to a variety of contexts. So just keep that in mind. Another thing for this week is I want you to be aware that your credibility narrative rough drafts will be due by 11:59 p.m. on September 15th. I will create a forum for you to post those rough drafts. They will disappear. If you do not post a rough draft of at least 2 pages, you will not be eligible for the peer review points. After you have submitted your rough drafts, I will then assign each of you a paper to review. Also, remember that once you open each week's content, there is a Remember To list. Use that as a checklist for completing each week's assignments, and you'll be able to stay on top of things. Now, on to today's lecture. We discussed last week the importance of setting personal goals for an argument. That is, do you want to change your audience's mood, their mind, or their willingness to act? Which, by the way, was the answer to last week's quiz. So, now that you've chosen a personal goal for an argument, you now want to control the tense. Now remember, these are the 3 tenses that arguments usually come in. There's blame, which is in the past tense and is not very productive. There's values, which is often presented in the present tense and is usually concerned with a capital T truth, which one really can't argue, such as one's belief in a god or disbelief in a god. Again, these don't necessarily have to do with moral questions, but they often do. And then there's choice, which is told in the future tense. This is the language of deliberation. This is the tense that you want your argument to take place in. Why does tense matter? Well, tense matters because every core issue can be placed in a certain tense. See pages 27 and 28 in our text, for example. If you are using the wrong tense, you risk not meeting your goal of persuading your audience. Again, we said past usually centers on blame, which is a matter of justice, also known as forensic rhetoric, asking the question, who done it? The first half of almost every Law and Order episode has to do with questions of blame. Then, as we noted, present tense has to do with praise and condemnation. This is also known as demonstrative rhetoric or tribal talk, which has the tendency to separate people into groups and distinguishes an us versus them. And finally, we have future, which is the rhetoric of decision making. It offers the biggest payoff because it asks the questions, what are we going to do about X, Y, or Z? And actually seeks solutions. Remember that decisions depend on particular circumstances, and there is really no such thing as an eternal truth or a cold hard fact. Decisions depend on open-mindedness, which has to do with a willingness to move beyond questions of right and wrong or good or bad. Those usually devolve into accusations and name-calling and get very little done. Focusing on choice attempts to solve problems to your and your audience's advantage. Remember, if you control the tense and the clock, you can usually have a good and productive deliberative argument. There are 3 types of logic which are based on Aristotle's big 3: ethos, logos, and pathos. Remember, these should not exist in a vacuum. A skilled rhetorician uses all 3 of these techniques to persuade his or her audience. They are the mind, body, and heart of an argument. Logos doesn't rely on pure logic. It adapts arguments to suit an audience's logic. Remember, knowing your audience and what they value is the key to persuading them. Ethos relies on a person's personal reputation and their ability to at least appear trustworthy. Nothing is as persuasive as a person's character. Politicians, of course, have taught us that. An agreeable ethos wins over an audience through the use of decorum. Pathos relies on your language choice and ability to paint a picture with your words. It inspires emotions, and emotions inspire people to act. The top emotions to appeal to are usually sympathy, anger, or humor. Remember, you don't have to share an audience's emotion, but you should mirror it. This tells them that you care. Now let's look at ethos a little more in depth, as it will be the basis of your first writing assignment. Ethos relies on the persuader's personal reputation and their ability, again, to appear trustworthy. Nothing is as persuasive as a person's character. Politicians have taught us that, as I mentioned before. An agreeable ethos wins over an audience through the use of decorum, as I mentioned. And as an aside, decorum is also the password for your test this week. It is spelled this way, and it is case sensitive with a capital D. Decorum is the skillful art of fitting in and winning the love of your audience. It relies on using the same language or code words of your audience, gesture, tonality, image, attitude, and dress. You cannot be indecorous and persuasive at the same time. Remember, it's all about how the audience perceives you. Again, you want to ask yourself, what do you want from your audience? Do you want them to be receptive to your ideas, attentive to what you have to say? You want them to like and trust you. The qualities of a persuasive ethos are virtue, and again, this is what the audience believes you to be. They believe that you share their values. Practical wisdom, which means you exhibit common sense or street smarts. And of course, selflessness. The audience concerns come before your own. We're talking about a rhetorical virtue here. This does not require purity of the soul, thank goodness. It denotes that you uphold or appear to uphold the values of the group. And remember that values change from group to group. Clearly, the concerns of peoples ages 18 to 22 differ greatly from those who are 25 to 35, and so on. It's also important to keep in mind that people of different genders, racial identities, and socioeconomic status will also have different concerns or values. There are a few forms of tactical rhetoric that you could adopt in order to display your rhetorical virtue. You can seem like a good person by highlighting all your accomplishments through bragging, but it's usually better to get someone to brag for you. You can reveal a tactical flaw that shows your dedication to your audience's values. And you can also appear to change your position when you see that your audience is changing their mind, that you have been presented with new information, especially if the argument is heading in that direction anyway.